Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, the UES Defiant. His eyes were fixed on the big screen that showed the path to the Galactic Council station. The metal floor under his boots felt cold, just like the feeling in his chest. For 3 long years, humanity had waited for their invitation to join the Council. That invitation never came. The bridge around him was quiet except for the soft hum of computers and the breathing of his crew. Commander Lisa Hayes walked up to him with a datapad in her hands. Her face looked tired like everyone else on the ship. They had all been fighting for too long. "Captain, the latest reports from the outer colonies," Lisa said, handing him the pad. Jake took it and read the words that made his jaw tighten. Another human colony attacked. Another 1,000 people dead. The Zephyrian Empire was destroying human settlements one by one, calling them cleaning operations. Jake had seen the videos from the attacks. Families running from their homes as alien ships dropped fire from the sky. Children hiding in basements. While their parents tried to fight back with farming tools against laser weapons, the lucky ones died quickly. The unlucky ones were taken as prisoners and never seen again. "What does Admiral Cooper say?" Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. Admiral Ryan Cooper was the man in charge of all human military forces. He was old, smart, and very angry about what was happening to human colonies. "He says we go." "To the council meeting whether they invite us or not," Lisa replied. "The Admiral is tired of waiting for permission while our people die." Jake nodded and looked back at the screen. The council station was 3 days away by hyperspace jump. It was a huge ring-shaped structure that orbited a peaceful world called Concordia. Inside that station, representatives from 47 different alien species made decisions that affected billions of lives across the galaxy. None of those representatives were human. The other alien species had made it very clear through secret messages that humans were not welcome. They said humans were too violent, too unpredictable, too dangerous for civilized space. They called humans the newcomers and the primitives. Some aliens even said humans were no better than animals, but Jake knew the truth. Humans were not. The violent ones, they were the ones being attacked. They were the ones watching their families die while the galaxy stayed silent. The council knew about the attacks on human colonies, but they did nothing. They said it was not their problem. "How many ships do we have?" Jake asked. 12 battle cruisers, all veterans from the recent fights, Lisa answered. The UES Vengeance with Captain Alex Turner, the UES Retribution with Captain Maria Santos, and 9 others. Every ship has battle damage from the Kepler 442 fight. Jake remembered Kepler 442. It was supposed to be a peaceful farming colony with 7,000 people. When the human fleet arrived to help, they found only burning buildings and mass graves. The Zephyrian ships were still there, taking pictures of the destruction like it was some kind of trophy. The battle that followed lasted 3 days. The human ships were outnumbered and outgunned, but they fought anyway. They fought because those dead colonists were their people. They fought because someone had to stand up to the bullies. They fought because the galaxy needed to know that humans would not go quietly into the night. "Are the ships ready for the jump?" Jake asked. "Yes, sir. All crews are at their stations. The other captains are waiting for your signal." Jake walked to the center of the bridge where the communication console was located. He pressed a button that connected him to all 12 ships in the fleet. The faces of 11 other captains appeared on small screens around him. Each face told a story of recent battles. Captain Turner had a bandage over his left eye from flying metal during the last fight. Captain Santos had burned marks on her neck from a plasma explosion on her ship. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jake said to his fellow captains, "we are about to make history. For 3 years, we have asked politely for our place at the council table. For 3 years, we have followed their rules and waited for their permission. For 3 years, we have watched our people die while the galaxy turned its back on us." He paused and looked at each face on the screens. These were good people, brave people, who had lost friends and family in the recent battles. They deserved better than to be ignored by the galaxy. "Today, we stop asking for permission. Today, we take our place at the council table. We go there not as beggars, but as equals. We go there not with clean ships and pretty uniforms, but with the blood and scars of our battles. We go there to show them what happens when civilized people are forced to fight for their lives. Captain, Santos spoke up from her screen. What if they refuse to let us dock at the station? Jake smiled, but it was not a happy smile. And then we dock anyway. We are not there to start a war, but we are not going to be turned away either. The galaxy needs to see what their silence has cost. The other captains nodded. They understood the mission. They understood the risks. They also understood that sometimes the only way to get respect is to demand it. All ships prepare for a hyperspace jump, Jake ordered. Destination, Council Station. Time to jump, 60 seconds. The bridge crew began their final checks. The hyperspace engines powered up with a deep rumble that Jake could feel in his bones. In 60 seconds, they would begin a journey that would change everything. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity would not be ignored anymore. 10 seconds to jump, the navigation officer called out. Jake looked one more time at the star. Map showing their destination. The council station was waiting, whether it knew it or not. In 3 days, 12 battle-damaged human ships would arrive at the most important place in the galaxy. They would arrive with their scars showing and their weapons ready. They would arrive to demand justice for their dead. Jump, Jake ordered. The stars stretched into lines of light as the fleet entered hyperspace. Behind them, they left the outer rim territories where human colonies struggled to survive. Ahead of them lay the center of galactic civilization and a confrontation that would determine the future of the human race. The die was cast. There was no turning back now. The council station was the most beautiful thing Jake Morrison had ever seen. The massive ring structure spun slowly around the peaceful world of Concordia, its metal surface gleaming in the light of the system's yellow star. From a distance, it looked like a perfect circle of silver against the black of space. It was home to thousands of beings from dozens of different worlds, all living together in harmony, but Jake was not here to admire the view. He stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant as his fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. 12 human warships appeared in flashes of blue light, their dark hulls a sharp contrast to the bright beauty of the station ahead. All ships report successful jump completion, Commander Lisa Hayes announced from her station. We are being scanned by Council security forces. Jake looked at the tactical display that showed their small fleet surrounded by dozens of Council ships. The alien vessels were sleek and clean, painted in bright colors that marked them as peacekeepers rather than warriors. They had probably never seen real combat, never had to fight for their lives against an enemy that wanted them dead. Captain, we are receiving a transmission from the station, the communication officer reported. They are demanding to know our business here. Put them through, Jake ordered. The main screen filled with the image of a tall, thin alien with pale blue skin and large black eyes. Jake recognized the species as Altarian, one of the founding members of the council. The being's voice was cold and formal when it spoke. Unknown human vessels, you are entering restricted space without authorization. State your business immediately or prepare to be escorted away. Jake stepped forward so the alien could see him clearly. His uniform was still dirty from the recent battles, and there were dark stains on his sleeve that might have been blood. He had not bothered to change clothes or clean up. He wanted the council to see exactly what their silence had cost. This, is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Defiant. We are here for the council session that begins tomorrow. We represent humanity and we have business to discuss. The alien's large eyes seemed to grow even larger. You have no authorization to be here. Humanity has not been granted observer status, let alone full membership. You must leave immediately. No, Jake said simply. We will not leave. We have waited 3 years for an invitation that never came. We have watched our people die while the council stayed silent. We are here now and we are staying. The transmission ended abruptly. Jake could imagine the panic that was probably spreading through the station as word reached the various ambassadors and representatives. Humans had arrived uninvited in warships with obvious battle damage. This was not how things were supposed to work in the civilized galaxy. "Captain, look at this," Lisa said, pointing to her sensor display. "The Council Defense Fleet is moving to intercept us." Jake watched as 30 alien ships began to form a line between the human fleet and the station. They were beautiful vessels, all smooth curves and elegant designs. They looked more like art pieces than weapons of war. Jake wondered if they had ever been tested in real combat. "Open a channel to all Council ships," Jake ordered. When the connection was established, Jake addressed the alien commanders. "This is Captain Morrison to all Council vessels. We are not here to fight you. We are here to attend the Council session. We will defend ourselves if attacked, but we prefer to settle this peacefully." The response came from a different alien. This one with green skin and multiple arms. "Human vessels, you will follow our ships to the detention area where you will be held until this matter is resolved." Jake almost laughed. The detention area was probably where they kept smugglers and pirates, not representatives of an entire species. "Negative, Council ships. We are ambassadors, not criminals. We will dock at the diplomatic section like any other visiting delegation." Ambassador Patricia Wells had been watching the confrontation from the observation deck of the station. She was the human representative who had been trying for months to convince the Council to accept humanity as members. She had spent countless hours in meetings, making presentations, answering questions, and trying to prove that humans could be civilized partners in galactic affairs. Now she watched in horror as 12 battle-damaged human warships faced off against the Council fleet. All of her careful diplomatic work seemed to be crumbling before her eyes. She had argued that humans were peaceful, that they could solve problems through discussion and compromise. The arrival of these scarred warships made her look like a fool. "Ambassador Wells," a voice said behind her. She turned to see Council Speaker Theven, the leader of the Altarian delegation. His pale face showed no emotion, but Patricia could sense his anger. "I can explain," she began, but Theven held up a hand to stop her. "Your people arrive in ships of war, uninvited and unwelcome. They refuse to follow proper procedures. They threaten our peaceful station with their presence. Is this the civilized behavior you promised us?" Patricia looked back at the human ships on the display. Each vessel told a story of recent battles. The used Defiant had a huge gash along its side where alien weapons had torn through the armor. The used Vengeance was trailing some kind of fluid from damaged systems, creating a blue cloud in space. The UES Retribution had scorch marks across its hull where plasma fire had tried to burn through to the crew inside. "They have been fighting for their lives," Patricia said quietly. "Human colonies have been attacked. Thousands of people have died. These ships carry the survivors of those battles." "That is not our concern," Theven replied. "The Council does not interfere in regional conflicts between primitive species." Patricia felt anger rising in her chest. Primitive? These people built ships that can travel between stars? They have colonies on dozens of worlds. They have art, music, literature, and science. How are they primitive? "They solve problems with violence," Theven said. "They build weapons instead of seeking peaceful solutions. They come here with battle damage and expect us to welcome them. This is not civilized behavior." On the display, the standoff continued. The human ships had formed a defensive formation, their weapons powered but not aimed at the Council vessels. The alien ships surrounded them in a perfect circle, their own weapons ready but not yet fired. Jake's voice came over the stations. "Communication system. Council Station, this is Captain Morrison. We request permission to dock and address the Council. We have important information about attacks on human colonies that the Council needs to hear. The station's command center was in chaos. Representatives from dozens of species were demanding answers. Some wanted the humans arrested immediately. Others wanted to hear what they had to say. A few were quietly asking their own governments for instructions on how to handle this unprecedented situation. "This is unprecedented," one alien official said. "No species has ever forced their way into Council space like this." "Maybe that is Because no species has ever been ignored while their people were being murdered. Another replied, the debate could have continued for hours, but it was interrupted by an alarm. The station's long-range sensors had detected something approaching from the outer system. More ships were coming and they were not human. Zephyrian battle group incoming, the sensor officer reported. 6 ships, heavy cruiser class. Jake heard the report on his own sensors. The Zephyrians were the aliens who had been attacking human colonies. They were coming to the council station now, probably to complain about human aggression or to demand that the humans be expelled from the system. All human ships, battle stations, Jake ordered. Looks like we might have more company than we expected. The beautiful, peaceful council station was about to become the center of a confrontation that would determine the future of humanity in the galaxy. 2 groups of warships faced each other in the space around the station while thousands of alien diplomats watched from the safety of their meeting rooms. Jake looked at his crew and saw the same determination in their eyes that had carried them through the recent battles. They had come here to demand justice for their dead. They had come here to make sure the galaxy knew that humanity would not be ignored anymore. The Zephyrian ships were getting closer. Soon the real test would begin. The Great Council Chamber was the largest room Jake Morrison had ever seen. The ceiling stretched up so high that it seemed to disappear into darkness. Hundreds of seats were arranged in circles around a central speaking area, each one designed for different kinds of alien bodies. Some seats were tall and thin for creatures with long necks. Others were wide and low for beings that crawled rather than walked. A few were filled with water for species that lived in the ocean. Jake walked into the chamber wearing his battle uniform. The fabric was torn in places and stained with grease and blood from the recent fighting. His boots made loud sounds on the metal floor as he moved toward the center of the room. Behind him walked Commander Lisa Hayes, Admiral Ryan Cooper, and Captain Beth Williams from the UES Retribution. Beth's left arm was wrapped in white bandages from injuries she got during the last battle. The alien representatives watched the humans with different kinds of eyes. Some had large black eyes like the Altarians. Others had compound eyes like insects. A few had no eyes at all but seemed to sense the humans through other means. The room filled with strange sounds as the aliens talked to each other in their own languages. There were clicks and whistles, electronic beeps, and sounds that humans had no names for. Council Speaker Theven stood up from his high seat at the front of the chamber. He was even taller than Jake had expected, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow in the chamber's lights. His voice was cold and formal when he spoke to the humans. You arrive here uninvited and unwelcome. You bring ships of war to our peaceful station. You disturb the harmony of this sacred place. Explain why you have come. Jake stepped forward into the center of the chamber. He could feel hundreds of alien eyes watching him. Some of the representatives looked angry. Others seemed curious. A few appeared frightened by the humans and their damaged uniforms. We come here seeking the recognition that was promised to us but never given, Jake said, his voice carrying clearly through the large chamber. For 3 years, we have waited for the council to invite us to join. For 3 years, we have followed your rules and procedures. For 3 years, we have watched our people die while this council stayed silent. A new voice spoke from across the chamber. Jake turned to see a creature that looked like it was made of living crystal. The being's body reflected the chamber's lights in rainbow colors as it moved. The human species has shown itself to be violent and unstable. You make war on peaceful traders. You build colonies without permission. You refuse to follow the proper ways of civilized space. Jake recognized the speaker as Ambassador Krelthus of the Zephyrian Empire. This was one of the aliens whose people had been attacking human colonies. The crystal being's words made Jake's hands clench into fists, but he kept his voice calm. Peaceful traders? Jake said. Is that what you call the ships that attacked our colony at Kepler 442? Commander Hayes stepped forward and activated a small device she carried. Suddenly, the air above the chamber's center filled with moving pictures. The images showed the aftermath of the attack on the human colony. Burning buildings, destroyed farms, and rows of graves where the colonists had been buried. These are your peaceful traders, Lisa said, her voice cutting through the chamber like a knife. Zephyrian warships attacking a farming colony, 7,000 civilians killed, including children. They were murdered because they were human. The images continued to play in the air above the chamber. Jake watched as alien representatives saw the destroyed homes and dead families. Some of the aliens made sounds of distress. Others seemed confused or angry. A few tried to look away from the horrible pictures. The humans lie, Krelthus said, his crystal body flashing with angry red light. They attacked our trade ships. First, they are the aggressors in this conflict. Show us the proof, Jake demanded. Show us the records of these attacks. Show us the documentation that proves your claims. The crystal being fell silent. Jake waited, but no proof came. The truth was becoming clear to everyone in the chamber. The Zephyrians had been attacking human colonies without cause, and they had no legal justification for their actions. Admiral Cooper stepped forward. He was an older man with gray hair and scars on his face from many years of military service. The attack on Kepler 442 was not the first, he said. For 2 years, Zephyrian forces have been destroying human settlements. They claim we are violating their territory, but they have never shown us any legal documents that prove their claims. More images appeared in the air. These showed other human colonies that had been attacked. Each one told the same story. Families trying to escape as alien. Ships dropped fire from the sky. Children hiding in basements while their parents fought back with whatever weapons they could find. The lucky ones died quickly. We tried to bring these attacks to the Council's attention through proper channels, Admiral Cooper continued. We sent reports, requested investigations, asked for protection. Every request was ignored or delayed. We were told that the Council does not interfere in regional conflicts between primitive species. The word primitive seemed to echo through the chamber. Jake saw some of the alien representatives shift uncomfortably in their seats. The humans had built ships that could travel between stars. They had colonies on dozens of worlds. They had technology and science and art. How were they? Primitive? Captain Beth Williams stepped forward despite her injured arm. The battle at Kepler 442 lasted 3 days, she said. We were outnumbered and outgunned, but we fought because those dead colonists were our people. We fought because someone had to stand up for the innocent. The images changed again. Now, they showed the space battle that had taken place after the human fleet arrived at the destroyed colony. The Zephyrian ships had still been in orbit, taking pictures of the destruction they had caused like it was some kind of trophy. We found them celebrating, Beth continued. 3 destroyers and a battlecruiser, proud of the murder they had committed. They opened fire on us the moment we arrived. The tactical display showed how the battle had progressed. The human fleet had been smaller and less powerful, but they had fought with desperate courage. Ship after ship had been damaged or destroyed, but they had continued fighting until the Zephyrians were defeated. Captain Maria Santos of the UES Retribution gave her life to stop them, Beth said, her voice breaking slightly. She rammed her ship into their flagship to make sure they could not escape to attack another colony. She died so that others might live. The chamber had become very quiet. Even the aliens who had been making angry sounds were now silent. The images of the battle showed the moment when Captain Santos had driven her ship into the enemy vessel. Both ships had exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the darkness of space. Jake looked around the chamber at the alien faces. Some looked shocked, others seemed angry. A few appeared to be thinking hard about what they had seen and heard. We did not come here to ask for your permission to exist, Jake said. We came here to tell you that humanity will no longer be ignored while our people are murdered. We will defend ourselves. We will make those who attack us pay the price. And if we refuse to grant you membership? Asked another alien representative. Jake's smile was not a happy one. Then we will defend our people anyway. With or without your approval, with or without your help. The galaxy can choose to work with us or against us. But the galaxy cannot choose to ignore us anymore. The chamber erupted in a chaos of alien voices. Some representatives were shouting angrily. Others were trying to ask questions. A few were calling for order. Council Speaker Theven stood up and raised his hands for silence. "This session is adjourned," he announced. "The Council will debate this matter in private. All representatives will gather tomorrow for the final vote." As the aliens began to leave their seats, Jake and his team remained in the center of the chamber. They had said what they came to say. They had shown the galaxy the truth about what was happening to human colonies. Now they would wait to see. If the Council would choose justice or continue their silence, the humans walked out of the chamber with their heads held high. Behind them, they left a room full of aliens who would spend the night deciding the future of humanity in the galaxy. The emergency session began at dawn. Jake Morrison stood in the witness area of the council chamber as hundreds of alien representatives filled their seats. The night had been long and tense. Reports said that many species had spent hours arguing among themselves about what to do with the humans. Some wanted them arrested and expelled from council space. Others demanded a full investigation into the Zephyrian attacks. Council Speaker Theven looked tired as he called the session to order. His pale blue skin seemed even paler than before, and his large black eyes showed the strain of the difficult decision ahead. The council will now hear additional testimony regarding the human request for membership. Jake was surprised when the first witness called was not a human. A tall, elegant being with silver skin and 4 arms stood up from the diplomatic section. Jake recognized the species as Andromedian, one of the oldest and most respected races in the galaxy. The being's voice was deep and musical when it spoke. "I am Ambassador Veltar of the Andromedian Republic. I wish to present evidence that may be relevant to this debate." The chamber fell silent. The Andromedians rarely spoke in council sessions, but when they did, everyone listened. They were the ones who had helped create the council thousands of years ago. They had seen civilizations rise and fall across the galaxy. "Our deep space monitoring stations have been tracking the conflict in human space for the past 2 years," Veltar continued. "We have records of every battle, every attack, every ship movement in that region. The Council should see the full truth before making its decision." New images appeared in the air above the chamber. These were not the emotional pictures of destroyed colonies that the humans had shown. These were cold, scientific recordings from Andromedian sensors. They showed ship movements, battle formations, and timeline data that could not be faked or changed. The first attack on a human colony occurred 18 months ago, Veltar explained. A Zephyrian battle group attacked the settlement on New Terra without warning. The colonists sent a distress signal, but no help came. 700 humans died. The images showed the attack in detail. Zephyrian ships dropping bombs on a small farming community. Human civilians trying to flee and transport ships that were shot down before they could escape. It was clear that this was not a military battle, but a massacre of innocent people. The humans sent a diplomatic message to the Zephyrian government requesting an explanation, Veltar continued. The reply claimed that the colony was built on Zephyrian territory without permission. However, our records show that this region of space has never been claimed by any government. Ambassador Krelthus, the crystal being from the Zephyrian Empire, stood up quickly. His body flashed with angry colors as he spoke. The Andromedians have no right to interfere in this matter. This is a dispute between humans and Zephyrians. It became our concern when innocent beings began dying, Veltar replied calmly. The Andromedian Republic has a duty to monitor threats to galactic peace. More images appeared. These showed a pattern of attacks over many months. Each time, Zephyrian ships would attack a human colony. Each time, they would claim the humans were trespassing on their territory. Each time, the attacks would target civilians rather than military forces. The humans requested council intervention 4 times, Veltar said. Each request was denied, or delayed. The humans were told that the council does not interfere in regional conflicts. Meanwhile, the attacks continued. Jake watched as the alien representatives saw the full scope of what had been happening. Many of them looked shocked. They had been told that this was a simple border dispute between two aggressive species. Now they could see that it was a systematic campaign of extermination. The battle at Kepler 442 was the turning point, Valtar continued. The humans finally had enough ships to fight back effectively. Our sensors recorded the entire engagement. The tactical display showed the battle from beginning to end. The human fleet had arrived to find Zephyrian ships still in orbit around the destroyed colony. The aliens had opened fire immediately, apparently confident that they could destroy the smaller human force, but the humans had fought differently than the Zephyrians expected. Instead of trying to match the aliens in firepower, they had used speed and clever tactics. They had coordinated their attacks perfectly, each ship supporting the others in a deadly dance of war. The humans were outnumbered 3-1, Valtar explained. Their ships were smaller and less powerful. By all logical calculations, they should have been destroyed quickly. Instead, they won the battle through superior tactics and exceptional courage. The display showed the moment when Captain Maria Santos had made her final decision. Her ship, the UES Retribution, had been badly damaged and losing power. Instead of trying to escape, she had turned toward the largest Zephyrian ship and accelerated to ramming speed. Captain Santos could have withdrawn her damaged vessel, Valtar said. Instead, she chose to sacrifice herself and her crew to ensure that the enemy flagship was destroyed. This prevented the Zephyrians from regrouping and attacking other human colonies. The image of the collision filled the chamber. Both ships had disappeared in a ball of fire that had lit up the darkness of space. The remaining Zephyrian vessels had fled rather than face the determined human fleet. Captain Alex Turner was called to give his testimony about the battle. His ship, the UES Vengeance, had been part of the fleet that fought at Kepler 442. He still wore a bandage over his left eye from injuries received during the fighting. We went to Kepler 442 to evacuate the colonists, Alex explained. We arrived too late to save them, but in time to catch the ships that had murdered them. The Zephyrians were taking pictures of the destruction like it was a tourist attraction. His voice grew hard as he continued. They opened fire on us the moment we dropped out of hyperspace. No warning, no attempt at communication. They just started shooting. That told us everything we needed to know about their intentions. The chamber listened as Alex described the 18-hour battle. The human ships had been faster and more maneuverable than the Zephyrian vessels, but they were also more fragile. Each hit from alien weapons could cripple or destroy a human ship. Captain Santos saved us all, Alex said. Her ramming attack took out their command ship and broke their formation. After that, we were able to pick them off one by one. But the cost was terrible. Good people died that day. Ambassador Patricia Wells was called to testify about her diplomatic efforts. She looked tired and defeated as she stood before the council. All of her careful work over the past months seemed meaningless now. I have spent 8 months trying to convince this council that humans deserve membership, she said. I have presented evidence of human achievements in science, art, and technology. I have argued that we can be peaceful partners in galactic civilization. She paused and looked around the chamber at the alien faces. But maybe I was wrong. Maybe the only language this galaxy understands is force. These battle-damaged ships have accomplished more in 3 days than I accomplished in 8 months of polite requests. The testimony continued for hours. Other human captains told their stories of the recent battles. Alien representatives asked questions and demanded explanations. The Zephyrian ambassador continued to claim that the humans were the aggressors. But his arguments sounded weak compared to the evidence being presented. Finally, Council Speaker Theven called for the final statements. Ambassador Krelthus stood up first, his crystal body flashing with desperate colors. The humans are violent and dangerous, he said. They attack peaceful ships and destroy property. They come here with weapons and threats. They do not belong in civilized space. But when Jake Morrison stood to give his final statement, the chamber fell completely silent. His uniform was still stained with the blood and dirt of recent battles. His face showed the exhaustion of a man who had seen too much death. "We came here because we had no choice," Jake said simply. "We tried diplomacy, we tried following your rules. We tried being patient. Our reward was to watch our people die while the galaxy stayed silent." He looked directly at the Zephyrian ambassador. "You call us violent, but we did not start this. War, you call us dangerous, but we only fight to protect innocent lives. You call us uncivilized, but we are the ones standing up for justice." Jake turned to address the entire council. "The galaxy can choose to work with us or against us. But the galaxy cannot choose to ignore us anymore. We will defend our people. We will protect the innocent. We will stand against those who prey on the weak. That is not a threat. That is a promise." The chamber was completely silent when Jake finished speaking. The time for words had ended. Now came the time for the council to decide the future of humanity in the galaxy. The council chamber was completely silent as the representatives prepared to vote. Jake Morrison stood in the center of the room with his fellow humans, waiting to learn the fate of their species. 3 days ago, he had been the captain of a battle-damaged warship. Now he was the voice of humanity before the most powerful government in the galaxy. Council Speaker Theven rose from his high seat. His pale blue face showed no emotion as he looked down at the humans. "The council will now vote on the question of human membership. Each species will cast 1 vote. A simple majority is required for acceptance." Jake felt his heart beating faster. Everything they had fought for, everything they had sacrificed, would be decided in the next few minutes. He thought about Captain Maria Santos and all the other brave people who had died defending human colonies. Their sacrifice would either be honored or forgotten based on what happened next. The voting began with the oldest species first. The Andromedians were called upon to vote. Ambassador Veltar stood up slowly, his forearms moving gracefully as he spoke. "The Andromedian Republic has watched many species join this council over the millennia," he said. "We have seen peaceful races and warlike ones. We have seen civilizations that solved problems through discussion and others that preferred action. Today, we vote in favor of human membership." A murmur went through the chamber. The Andromedians rarely took sides in council disputes, but their support for humanity was clear and strong. Jake felt a small spark of hope in his chest. The Altarians were called next. These were the pale beings who ran much of the council's daily business. Council Speaker Theven himself was Altarian, and Jake was not sure how they would vote. "The Altarian Collective has concerns about human methods," their representative said. "However, we cannot ignore the evidence of Zephyrian aggression. We vote in favor of human membership, with the condition that proper diplomatic procedures be followed in the future." Jake almost smiled. The Altarians were saying yes, but they were also telling the humans to behave better next time. It was exactly the kind of compromise that politicians loved. The voting continued species by species. Some voted for humanity immediately. Others voted against, saying that humans were too violent or unpredictable. A few abstained, saying they needed more time to think about the decision. The Crystalline Federation, which included the Zephyrian Empire, voted as a bloc against human membership. Ambassador Krelthus stood up and declared that humans were a threat to galactic peace. His crystal body flashed with angry red light as he spoke. "The humans come here with weapons and threats," he said. "They refuse to follow proper procedures. They attack peaceful traders and claim to be victims. The galaxy will regret allowing such violent beings into civilized space." But other species disagreed. The Aquarian Collective, which lived in the oceans of water worlds, voted in favor of humanity. Their representative spoke in bubbling sounds that were translated by computers. "The humans fight to protect their children," the translation said. "This is behavior we understand and respect. Any species that defends its young deserves our support." The hive minds voted for humanity as well. These were species where many individuals shared one consciousness. Their representative made clicking sounds as it spoke. "The humans show unity in battle that reminds us of ourselves. the translation said. They sacrifice for each other without hesitation. This demonstrates evolution toward higher consciousness. Jake watched the vote count carefully. Each yes brought humanity closer to acceptance. Each no meant they might have to return to the outer rim as outcasts. The numbers were very close, and every vote mattered. The surprise came when the ethereal consortium voted. These were beings of pure energy who rarely took interest in physical matters. Their representative appeared as a shimmering light that spoke without sound. We have observed the humans for some time, the translated voice said. They possess something rare in the galaxy, the willingness to die for strangers. This quality is precious and should be protected. We vote in favor of membership. Ambassador Patricia Wells stood next to Jake, counting votes on her datapad. Her hands were shaking slightly as she calculated the numbers. The vote was going to be very close. When the last species had voted, Council Speaker Theven stood up to announce the results. The chamber was completely quiet except for the soft hum of air recycling systems. Even the aliens who usually made constant noise had fallen silent. The final vote count is as follows, Theven said. 24 species vote in favor of human membership, 21 species vote against. 2 species abstain. By a margin of 3 votes, the motion passes. Humanity is granted full membership in the Galactic Council. The chamber erupted in noise. Some aliens were celebrating, others were protesting, and a few seemed to be arguing among themselves. Jake felt a wave of relief wash over him. They had done it. Humanity was finally part of the galactic community, but Theven was not finished speaking. He raised his hands for silence and continued. The Council also votes to establish a joint task force to investigate attacks on civilian populations. This task force will have the authority to pursue war criminals across species boundaries. Ambassador Krelthus jumped up from his seat, his crystal body flashing with panic. The Council has no authority to interfere in Zephyrian internal affairs. The Council has every authority to pursue those who commit crimes against innocent beings, Theven replied coldly. The evidence presented here shows clear violations of galactic law. Justice will be served. Jake realized what was happening. The Council was not just accepting humanity as members. They were also promising to help hunt down the aliens who had attacked human colonies. Zephyrians who had murdered innocent families would finally face punishment for their crimes. Admiral Ryan Cooper stepped forward and saluted the Council. On behalf of humanity, we accept this membership and the responsibilities that come with it. We pledge to defend not just human worlds, but all worlds that call for aid. Ambassador Veltar of the Andromedians stood up again. The Andromedian Republic offers to provide ships and personnel for the Joint Task Force. It is time to show the galaxy that civilized beings will not tolerate the murder of innocents. Other species began volunteering as well. The Aquarians offered their deep space scouts. The hive minds provided their coordination networks. Even some of the species that had voted against human membership offered to help with the investigation. Jake looked around the chamber and realized that something important had changed. 3 days ago, humanity had been alone in the galaxy, ignored, and attacked while the civilized worlds looked away. Now they were part of something bigger, something that stood for justice and protection of the innocent. Ambassador Patricia Wells approached Jake with tears in her eyes. Captain, I owe you an apology. I thought diplomacy alone could solve our problems. I was wrong. Sometimes you have to be willing to fight for what is right. Jake shook his head. You were not wrong, Ambassador. We needed both approaches. Your diplomatic work prepared the ground for what we accomplished here. Without that foundation, our arrival might have been seen as just another act of aggression. As the council session ended, Jake and his fellow humans prepared to return to their ships. They would go back to human space as representatives of their people, carrying news of humanity's acceptance into the galactic community, but they would also go back as something more. They would return as part of a joint fleet that would hunt down war criminals and protect innocent beings across the galaxy. The blood-stained ships that had arrived at the council station would be repaired and reinforced, But they would never forget the battles that brought them here, Captain Alex. Turner joined Jake as they walked toward the docking bay. So what happens now, Captain? Jake looked out through a viewport at the stars beyond the station. Somewhere out there, human colonies were still rebuilding from the attacks. Somewhere out there, other species might be facing similar threats. The work was far from over. Now we go home and tell our people that they are no longer alone, Jake said. We tell them that justice exists in this galaxy and that humanity will help enforce it. We tell them that the blood spilled by our friends and families was not spilled in vain. The human fleet departed the Council Station 3 hours later. 12 battle-scarred ships flew away from the great ring structure, but they were no longer alone. Ships from a dozen other species flew with them, forming the first joint task force in galactic history. The bloodstains had been cleaned from their hulls, but the memory of what those stains represented would never be forgotten. Humanity had arrived at the Council with blood-stained ships and left as defenders of galactic justice. The galaxy would never be the same.